Hello everyone and welcome back to Sendik's Weather Channel. Today we are back looking at the latest for the next couple of weeks from the models, as we normally would. We're going to be looking at the midday set of runs. At the end of the video we'll be doing our regular feature, which is the CFS look ahead. It's kind of become my thing at the moment, but I think a lot of you might get excited about it at the end of the video. But we're going to be looking at the current conditions that we are seeing at the ground level and also the next few days. Now, as some of you might know, there's been some quite big thunderstorms around, particularly in the southwest and in the western half of the UK. They've pushed eastwards and turned more to heavy rain, but some areas have seen some decent thunderstorms. So there's something of interest to point out. But actually quite a lot more widespread than was expected at first. So, yeah, I'll keep an eye out for them. There's possibilities over the next few days of some, but they will seem to die out over the next few days. Now, looking at the current pattern, we have low pressure position just to our north and west, and high pressure sort of to our south and west. And we're in sort of an Atlantic-driven westerly flow at the moment. As we go beyond into the middle to latter part of this week, low pressure begins to approach from off the Atlantic. You can see low pressure sat just to the north of Scotland, out towards Iceland, and it is turning things particularly unsettled in the north, but not also just for the north of Scotland, but for many parts of the UK as well, turning increasingly unsettled. You can see there a little low pressure there, area of low pressure on Saturday, moving through the southwest, might bring a little bit of rain into the far south as it weakens as it moves through the country. But then this is the area of interest. By Monday the 15th next week, you can see high pressure ridging towards Greenland again. This has been hinted at by some models, but this area of low pressure is quite deep and will bring in potentially some heavy rain, particularly to the north of the UK. Could this be named? I doubt it. It's not strong enough. There has been some talk and speculation of that, but I do doubt it. But you can see that area of low pressure clears through the northwest of Scotland, clears to the east, and as you can see, it pulls the wind into more of a northwesterly to northerly wind, turning things a little bit cooler and fresher as we go into the middle to latter half of next week. But as you can see, before that takes hold, we get a ridge building through the country before we see another area of low pressure waiting in the wings to move in, and before you know it, by the 20th, we're back into an unsettled theme. Low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, winds in from a westerly direction, more areas of low pressure forming within the flow, diving southwards, and it's remaining relatively changeable. A little bit cooler than average for the foreseeable future with this run, but nothing too ridiculous, nothing groundbreaking for the time of year, just a little bit below average than you'd normally expect. So yeah, definitely turning a little bit more changeable and unsettled with the GFS today. So how does the GEM compare? Again, low pressure moving in from the west, from the west. You can see it's moving through the UK, diving back to our north, winds in from a southwesterly direct. What is going on with my speech? From a southwesterly direction. Thank you. Apologies everyone, I'm all over the place. But you can see by Thursday, again, another area of low pressure moving in from off the Atlantic. A blocking area of high pressure to the northeast over Scandinavia, the eastern side of Scandinavia, keeping that area of low pressure at bay over the top of the country and remaining things unsettled for a time. You can see it dries off through Sunday into Monday to end this week, but then into the other part of next week, again, area of low pressure moving in from off the Atlantic, particularly affecting northwest England and northern Scotland, of course, southern Scotland, central belt Scotland, all those sort of areas. And as that clears through to the east again, very similar to the GFS, ridge builds in the Atlantic up towards Greenland. And as you can see, we're back into more of a fresher north to northwesterly wind, so turning things a bit cooler again. So yeah, remaining relatively cool for the next week to 10 days with that run as well. So very similar trends being shown here from the GFS and the GEM, so very good model consensus. Moving on finally to the ECM, not fully out, but it might be by the time I press the refresh button. Again, but turning more unsettled, low pressure, moving through the country. Dry for tomorrow, besides in the west, but by Wednesday, we've got low pressure waiting in the wings, moving in from off the Atlantic, turning things more unsettled, particularly in the north. You can see areas of low pressure moving in, and that's going to spin around the country and produce unsettled weather. Obviously turning things more cooler as well, much cooler, I should say, not more. much cooler. Winds in from off the Atlantic going into Sunday and Monday next week. Low pressure again, that area of low pressure, pretty good consensus. Going to the north of the UK, maybe affecting southern central Scotland in particular, so as northern Scotland with potentially some relatively strong winds. That clears into the Atlantic and things turn slightly cooler for a time, but winds remaining from a southwesterly direction with the ECM. Instead of heights building to our west, there's a trough of low pressure just to the south of Greenland instead of heights building. So slight differences within the model output, but nothing too crazy. The trend looks pretty set in stone for it to turn unsettled, at least for the next few days to at least next week, really. Comparing that to the diagrams from the model run, then you can see here, if we move it there, you can see that the trend is to remain slightly below average overall for the next week to 10 days. You can see it does pick up towards the end of the run, and there is a slight spike appearing within the models around the 14th of September, but that's also associated with increased precipitation in the south and the southeast in particular, courtesy of that low pressure moving in, area of low pressure moving in from off the Atlantic, which could be quite intense, particularly in the north. But in the south, it will bring in that southwesterly wind, which could allow some slightly milder air to be dragged in. So, a very mixed bag for the next couple of weeks. Unsettled to start with at times, not so much so in the south, but it will have its fair share of rainfall and precipitation compared to what we've seen as of late over the last few weeks. But then you can see into the extended range beyond day 10, things do trend towards high pressure again, possibly, but it's a long way off. Bit of uncertainty. Some runs are drier and milder than average, some runs are cooler than average, so a bit of a mixed bag. But overall, it looks like a pretty cool chart until around the 20th of September. But of course, that's subject to change. Comparing that to the ECM midnight run to see how those compare for London. Again, very similar trend, remaining below average for until the very end of the run. Not too much to say about that, very similar to the GFS, but you can see here a little bit more unsettled throughout the whole run, more consistent with its precipitation spikes, suggesting a slightly more favoured theme of an ongoing unsettled period going on, but again, nothing too unsettled or remarkable for the time of year. Now, as we normally would, we're going to look at a CFS model run to see what it's showing today. We'll look at these most days, because why not, you know? But anyway, starting on the 1st of December, very typical pattern as you'd expect for the winter. Low pressure to the north, high pressure to the south, winds in from a west-southwesterly direction. So a pretty mild start. But you can see transient ridge builds through the country on the 2nd. For high pressure has a go at building to our north, high recedes towards Scandinavia, builds to our northeast and tries to bring in some cooler air. A bit of a cold pool, brings in the -5 line, and then it remains colder with high pressure seeming to sit over just to the north of the country for a time for the second week of December, so pretty cold to start with. However, you can see low pressure stubborn out to our west, is just going to move that high pressure away. It recedes to our east into Eastern Europe, collapses, and we bring it more of a southwesterly wind into the 3rd week of December, so things turn much milder and much more unsettled in the west. Going up to Christmas, you can see heights are trying to rise, warmer advection towards Scandinavia, but low pressure really powering up in the Atlantic, just over Greenland, and that is just keeping the very mild theme going over the Christmas period, so very mild Christmas favoured here. Into the start of January, again, continuing that unsettled theme. However, you can see into the middle to second half of the 1st week of January, I should say the start of January, high pressure ridging in the Atlantic, low pressures taking more of a southerly track with the jet stream diving southwards into Spain and Portugal. At this point, that dives to our south, heights build over to our northeast, and we bring in some slightly colder air from the east. No beast from the east or anything like that, but high pressure returning towards Greenland and Iceland, bringing in that cold easterly winds, probably enough to drag in a few snow showers from the east, but nothing too ridiculous. A ridge builds through the country into the long term, and then high pressure kind of gets stuck around the country, just to our south, keep turning things drier and milder as well. It's only into the end of January when heights try to build again to our northeast, but they kind of sit around the country, for a while at least anyway. High pressure just sat around the top of the UK. We do see some colder air, but we're under the area of high pressure, so plenty of overnight frosts are possible into the last week of January with this, but nothing too ridiculous. Referring to the final frames of this run into the 1st week of Feb, High pressure properly retrogresses towards Greenland. Low pressures over Scandinavia, winds turn to more of a northeasterly direction, and things turn much colder, -10 line through the country. And wow, this is a really extreme end. High pressure really maintaining itself towards Greenland and Iceland for quite a few days there. 4 or 5 days, plenty of snow potential. Trough of lows sliding along the east coast there, through the North Sea. They could produce bouts of snow for many areas. High pressure remains to our north, but very weak. So we're actually on a boundary there, plenty of snow potential there. We've got troughs of low pressure to the south, trying to push in from off the Atlantic, and along that line we have battlegrounds drawn. Got high pressure to our north remaining in control. Got areas of low pressure pushing in from off the Atlantic, and we've got that boundary line. The boundary line is where you could see really heavy snow. There you go. But it's a very cold run this at the end. But you can see things turn milder into the final days before again high pressure has another go to end off the winter, pushing towards Greenland and does successfully, and that could produce some more cold air. So it definitely gets going towards the middle to the latter half of the run, with plenty of attempts at colder weather, and definitely there would be some snow if this winter came off, and probably a lot of people would be happy, especially in that third to latter half of Jan into the start of Feb. Definitely will be happy with those charts. But of course, it's a long way off, it's very unreliable, and it probably won't come off, as we know what normally happens with the UK weather. But yeah, just a bit of fun to look at the end of the video. So to summarise, things look relatively unsettled for the next 7 to 10 days, particularly in the north, but not exclusively. Further south, probably a little bit drier, but still will have its fair share of showers and potentially thunderstorms at times, but definitely the chance will reduce as we go through into the second half, the middle half of autumn. So yeah, that's today's update. Thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you find these videos informative. I appreciate your continued support on the road to 2,000. Let's see if we can hit that before the end of the month. That'd be really appreciated. And thank you all for watching. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.